welcome to Tribe Choices at the Movies. My name is Kara Minix.
And I'm Ellen Dando.
This week we're going to be giving Halloween movie suggestions, some of which are not scary at all, and some of which are a little bit scary.
My first suggestion is Unfriended. Some of you guys might have seen the trailer when it first came out. I believe it was in like early January last year. It kind of got a viral buzz. The gimmick behind Unfriended is that the entire movie takes place on the computer screen of the main character. So she's on, various Skype calls. You see like her Facebook history, her like internet history. Like Spotify plays a role. Like I didn't know Spotify was scary, but Spotify becomes scary. And like literally it's all, I guess technically one take because it's straight up just the computer screen. There's no zooming in. You never get outside of that. And it's actually a really effective device. It's probably one of the only horror movies that's scarier when you watch it on your laptop than when you watch it in theaters. And the thing I really appreciate about it is that the people that made the movie obviously know how internet culture is right now. Like I said, there are many Skype calls. The whole time they have their headphones in because they don't want to loop, which is like something that I feel like only actual like young people would kind of know right now. And the central premise is that it's the anniversary of a girl who committed suicide in their high school due to cyberbullying, and she had a connection to kind of each of the people that are doing the Skype call at the time, and then spooky things start to happen both in their house, on their computers, and I never thought I would be terrified by like the default Mac sounds, but they do some really interesting stuff with the like everyday things that you hear from your computer, so that after you see the movie you're like, oh, okay. It wasn't the scariest thing I've ever seen, but it was like genuinely scary.
Was it like what type of scary was it?
So there is like violence in it. I wouldn't say it's an excessive gore, but it's a lot of jump scares and a lot of there are things that happen in the beginning, they're kind of innocuous, and then as more information is revealed about the situation and their history with this person, you kind of get a chill down your spine as you realize things in the beginning of the movie that you thought were kind of innocent or normal were not. And so the situation essentially it's like an escalating situation through the whole movie, and the climax is very like edge of your seat. Oh my gosh, what is happening?
How many griffins would you say this movie is?
I'd probably say about like 7 griffins.
Yeah?
Yeah.
You can watch this movie in these places. Additionally to these 4 movies that we're recommending, we would also like to recommend the movie Heathers and Cabin in the Woods as good Halloween type movies. However, we have recommended those in the past. I recommended Heathers when I did Valentine's Day movies, and we recommended Cabin in the Woods for spring break movies, both last semester. So if you want to know more about those, you can go watch those. But those are both good Halloween movies if you do not like jump scare type stuff, but they definitely have violence in them, and Cabin in the Woods has a lot of gore. But they're both very interesting and very well made. We're gonna give both Cabin in the Woods and Heathers an 8. Cabin in the Woods 8.2. Is that what you're saying? So like they're both very solid movies.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Watch this movie here.
So the second movie I want to recommend is Catfish, the original documentary before the MTV TV show. The reveal is a little bit less because now like the word catfish is kind of in our lexicon, but when it first came out, I actually didn't even know it was a documentary walking into the movie. I thought it was a narrative of like found footage narrative, and then once I left I was like, oh my gosh, that was a documentary. So to set it up, Nev, one of the 2 like main guys, starts an online relationship with this girl, and it's going really well, and then some suspicions start to arise about the nature of the relationship and who she is, etc. And itself as a documentary is really interesting, and the way it starts, like you kind of have to go into it like with a complete blank slate in your mind. The way it starts is like very innocuous, and it's like kind of like, okay, I know what kind of movie it is, I know what direction they're going in, and then the editing is actually really, really good, and the way they just like reveal little hints here, little hints there, and at first you're not even like, that's weird, you're just like, oh, that's like, it's what's happening, and then as they start to pile up, you're like, okay, there's something more happening here, and the last, I'd say 20 minutes of the movie are one of the most cringeworthy, and I'll say creepy, things I've ever seen actually in a documentary. And obviously it spawned this whole other thing on MTV and is now kind of an internet phenomenon, but this is the original. And if you're looking for kind of a good Halloween, just creeping sense of dread, something's not right here, it's really, really good, and it's really interesting to be and this happened 4 years ago maybe. Okay, I would give my experience seeing it, because again, it was catfishing was not a thing. That movie is what came up with that term. When I saw it, I would say 7.5.
Really?
Yeah.
But what about now?
What about now that catfishing is kind of a thing, it's a little bit less of a reveal, probably a 6.5.
Watch this movie here. One of my favorite directors ever, my single most favorite director, is Alfred Hitchcock. And he is a great person to watch their movies on Halloween, if that sentence makes sense. Because he is really he does a lot of suspense. So I hate horror movies, and I hate the jump scare stuff. I don't mind blood or gore or violence or anything like that, but jump scares, I am not okay with that. So Alfred Hitchcock, I think, is the perfect thing, because it's really suspenseful, but most of the time it's not something jumps out at you. So my favorite movie, and my favorite Alfred Hitchcock movie, is Rear Window, which is an incredible movie. And basically Jimmy Stewart is playing the main character, and he is a photographer who broke one of his legs, and now he's bedridden basically in his apartment that overlooks a courtyard, I guess, where you can see a bunch of other people doing their daily lives in their apartments. And at summertime, so a lot of them are outside and stuff. And then Grace Kelly plays his girlfriend person who comes and visits. And all he does is watch his neighbors because he has nothing else to do. And he thinks that one of them murdered his wife. And then they have to figure out what happened. And it's so good. And it's so cool, the way that they shot it with all of the courtyard stuff. Yeah. And it's really interesting too. You kind of, it's the murder, oh, did he murder his wife, or trying to figure out if he did, is sort of suspenseful, but then near the end there's this one really suspenseful part, so it's a nice sort of variation. Most of the time you're oh, this is an interesting movie, and then you're oh god, but then it ends. So that's an incredible movie, and I really recommend it. Other good Hitchcock movies for people that like suspense but are not super into jump scares, and for Halloween type stuff would be Psycho. That's a really good one. Dial M for Murder is a good one. The first Hitchcock movie I ever watched was To Catch a Thief, and that's a really good one too, as far as that one is much more lighthearted than a lot of the other ones. So if you're really not into horror at all, that one's oh, it's a fun mystery. So yeah, anything Alfred Hitchcock I would recommend. So I would say pretty much every single Hitchcock movie that I have ever seen is at least an 8. I don't know if you agree.
No, I would absolutely agree.
And again, Rear Window is my favorite one. I would probably give that 9.5. I love Rear Window. Go watch that movie. It's really good. Maybe if you want to see this, you can watch it here.
Okay, so the next movie we want to recommend is Shaun of the Dead. It was the first collaboration of Edgar Wright, Nick Frost, and Simon Pegg in the film world before they had done Spaced on BBC for, I think, 2 seasons. And it's a pretty, rote trope that we've seen before. Essentially, there's a zombie apocalypse. They don't even really try to explain what it is, which I kind of like. It's just it's zombies. We know what zombies are. And Simon Pegg plays the titular Shaun. And he has this dead-end job at an electronics store. He's kind of flaky with his girlfriend. He lives with his best friend, who's played by Nick Frost. And he's just kind of very humdrum, normal life. And then there's this zombie apocalypse, and he kind of uses this opportunity to be a little bit above mediocre, which is what most of his life has been up to this point. It is definitely a comedy, almost from the very first scene. It's genuinely hilarious through the whole thing. They parody a lot of zombie stereotypes, embrace a lot of the zombie stereotypes. It's definitely, Edgar Wright's known for like his like editing and using like edits and shots like as the actual punchline, and that's definitely obvious here. A lot of really good music. The soundtrack's really good, and we see a lot of the kind of like stronger British comedians as of late are in this movie. It is a little violent. I wouldn't say it's scary. There's maybe one jump scare.
Is it like a lot of blood?
Yeah, there's a lot of blood. And they're not precious with their characters.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And you know, it's a zombie movie. There's a lot of nomming on things. So yeah, it's definitely the gore that's it's almost kind of like Quentin Tarantino gore, where it's like cartoonish, if that makes sense. So yeah, if you don't like horror movies, you would definitely be fine with Shaun of the Dead. You're not gonna be like traumatized or anything like that, because at the end of the day, it is a comedy. So they kind of just use like the zombies as like a platform for talking more about like, you know, stepping up to the plate and stuff like that in terms of your life. I would give Shaun of the Dead 8.5 Griffins.
8.5, yeah. You can watch this movie in these places. Another good zombie movie, if you are into zombie movies for Halloween, is Zombieland. That's another really great like zombie comedy movie, starring Emma Stone and Jesse Eisenberg and Woody Harrelson, and Bill Murray's in it for a short time.
For a hot second.
Yeah. But that's a really good movie, and it's really funny. But it's definitely gory.
Oh yeah.
The zombie movies are like, it's not like, I wouldn't say it's realistic blood and stuff, but there is so much of it. That's the same with Cabin in the Woods too. It's like, by the end, everything is covered in red, but it's not realistic.
No. Yeah. I'd give Zombieland like 7 Griffins.
7? I think Zombieland is worth more than 7 Griffins.
Okay. It's a solid movie.
Yeah.
It's like,
I would give it like, I don't know. This is hard because like I gave Alfred Hitchcock 8+. So I don't want to give Zombieland an 8, but like also I want to give Zombieland. Like I would say I like Zombieland as much or more than Heathers and Cabin in the Woods. Maybe if you want to see this, you can watch it here. Quick recap of all the movies that we've mentioned.
I'd say the most just kind of like stereotypical like horror would definitely be Unfriended. You will be scared if you see this movie, and it also has a good amount of violence in it.
And you'd say like Catfish also is pretty.
Yeah, like, Catfish is more. It's more like you feel like when you're done watching it, you feel very uncomfortable about a lot of things.
Yeah. So then on the other hand, or other sort of similar to that but not, I would say Alfred Hitchcock those are good movies to see if you like want something that's sort of suspenseful but there's like no blood or anything in those.
Yeah.
And most of them, well, sort of. Like at the end, it doesn't leave you with like a weird feeling at the end generally. It's not too hard to bounce back from a lot of Alfred Hitchcock movies, especially Rear Window. That one's not, I don't know, unless you like think about them too much. But just if you kind of just pretend you know it's not real, then you're fine. But so you definitely can walk away from those pretty easily. But if you want to watch the comedy sort of gory ones, are definitely Shaun of the Dead and Cabin in the Woods and Heathers and Zombieland. Those are fun Halloween movies, but don't watch them if you're squeamish.
Yeah.
Those are our recommendations for Halloween this year.
Thanks for watching. My costume, I'm going as the omnipresent Hotline Bling. Shout out to Amrutha for this Etsy sweatshirt, and this is my fake bling. Yep.
I'm Marty McFly. Look. Oh, this arm.
Oh.
We're out of time. Back to the future. What's going on? It's too meta.